Make sure that you subscribe to this channel and leave a like. We're going to have a lot more great stories like this one. The Call of Courage, Chapter 2, page 24. A storm was making move in out of those mysterious belts which lie north and south of the equator, the home of hurricanes. The wind shifted a point, bringing with it a heavy squall. Mafatu lowered the sail on the run and gripped the steering paddle with hands that showed white at the knuckles. All around him now was a world of tumbling water, gray in the hollows, greenish on the slopes. The wind tore off the combing crests and flung the spray at the sky. Like the advanced scouts of oncoming army, wind gusts moved down upon the canoe, struck at it savagely. So busy was Mafatu with the paddle that there was no time for thought. He called a prayer to Mao, god of the fishermen. Mao et imauta tu. Somehow the sound of his own voice reassured him. Yuri lifted his head, cocked his ears, thumped his tail for a second. The canoe rose to the swells as lightly as a gull and coasted like a sled down the frothing slopes. What skill had wrought this small canoe, this dugout hewn from the mighty tamanu tree? It swooped and yielded, bucked and scudded, one with the fierce element whose back it rode. The sky darkened. A burst of lightning lit up the sea with supernatural brilliance. A instantaneous crack of the thunder shattered the world. Lightning again, striking at the hissing water. Mafatu watched it with fascinated eyes. Now it was all about him. It ran to the end of the boom in globes of fire that exploded and vanished in the awful moment of its being. It revealed mountain shapes of dark water, heaving, shouldering. How long could it frail craft of wood and senate resist? Under the combined attack of wind and sea, it seemed that something must inevitably give way. The wind shrilled a fiercer note. Spray stung the boy's flesh, blinded his eyes, chilled his marrow. The sail went first with a split and a roar. Fragments swept off on the back of the wind. The cords that held the mast hummed like plucked wires. Then with a rending groan, the mast cracked. Before Mafatu could leap to cut it clear, it snapped off and disappeared in a churn of black water. The boy clung to the paddle, fighting to keep his canoe from turning broadside. Water swept abroad and out again. Only the buoyancy of the tamanu kept the craft afloat. Yuri cowered in the bow, half submerged, his howls drowned by the roar of the elements. Mafatu gripped his paddle for very life, an unreasoning terror powering his arms. This sea that he had always feared was rising to claim him, just as it had claimed his mother. How rightly he had feared it. Maona, the sea god, had been biding his time. Some day, Mafatu, I will claim you. The boy lost all sense of time's passage. Every nerve became dulled by tumult. The wind howled above his head, and still Mafatu clung to the lashed steering paddle, clung fast long after strength had vanished, and only the will to live locked his strong fingers and the shaft. Even death would not loose the grip of those fingers. He held his little craft true to the wind. There was a wave lifting before the canoe. Many the boy had seen this, but this was a giant, a monster, livid and hungry. Higher and higher it rose until it seemed that it must scrape at the low hanging clouds. Its crest heaved over with a vast sigh. The boy saw it coming. He tried to cry out. No sound issued from his throat. Suddenly the wave was upon him. Down it crashed, chaos. Mafatu felt the paddle torn from his hands, thunder in his ears, water strangling him, terror in his soul. The canoe slewed down into the trough. The boy flung himself forward, wound his arms about the mid thwart. It was the end of a world. The wave passed, stunned, gasping. Mafatu raised his head and looked about. For a second, he could not believe that he still breathed and had been. He saw Yuri wedged under the bow, choking for air. He pulled the dog free. Then he saw that his string of drinking nuts had vanished. His fish spear was gone. The knife that hung about his neck by a twist of bark had been torn away. Even his paru of fire tapa fell from his body as water soaked it through. He was naked, defenseless, without food or weapon, hurled forward on the breath of the hurricane, numb of all feeling, empty as a shell. Still he clung to life in the hours drowned by. So gradually was the storm's easing that at first the boy was unaware of it. The wind was blowing itself out, moving off into the empty spaces of the world. Yuri crept toward the prostrate boy, quailing beside him, whimpering softly. Night came and passed. Please subscribe